Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. It's always annoying to work with a grumpy boss who should have retired a long time ago, especially when he doesn't recognize his employees by sight. That's what our first story's about. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Boss doesn't recognize his own employee when she walks into work in a dress. This is my mother-in-law's story, not mine. My MIL is a short, fat, busty woman in her 50s and works in security. Yes, she looks like a sweet older lady, but she's tough and thorough and will threaten to place you under arrest. Her lead supervisor is old, senile, and gets in his own way. Despite a high turnover rate due to not the best management skills, as trying to become an armed guard is easy as pulling teeth, my MIL has endured as this has been her first job in 26 years after raising her son as a stay-at-home wife in extreme poverty. People have rage quit due to how Brian tends to upset and confuse and change schedules without notice, literally telling his security officers to call him corporal in front of police officers and to watch Red Dawn as training. Also, you can get written up if you alert him your coworker left their gun in plain sight in their locked car, as a courtesy. You can't make this up. Despite this, she endures as it's far better than the alternate. Anyway, names change for obvious reasons. Cast, Jane equals my mother-in-law, Brian equals elderly supervisor, Bob equals other supervisor. As this was told to me, it's not word for word, but a rough summary as to what happened. Jane was wearing a yellow and red flower dress running errands and had to stop by security home office to do something. Not sure what, but she figured she was out and thought it was best to get whatever she needed to do out of the way. She goes and finds Bob, one of the primary supervisors that managed most operations. He greets Jane and likes my mother-in-law because of the work he'd seen out in the sites. They move further into the office and Brian comes up, sees Bob, then sees Jane. Brian tells Jane, Ma'am, you can't be in here. This office is closed. Bob speaks up and tells Brian, no, it's all right, she's with me. Brian's eyebrows wiggle and says, oh, so she's with you, huh? Like, what a Everyone was confused. My MIL and Bob then laugh. It was clear a while ago Brian has never been all too observant, despite working in security. Despite talking face-to-face with her numerous times in her year with the company, Brian didn't recognize his own employee outside her uniform. Evidently, by this encounter, Jane was in clear disguise and took on the identity of a strange woman walking into a security office like a wandering idiot who happened to be holding casual conversation with his co-supervisor. Bob goes, Brian, this is Jane. It finally clicked. Oh, hey. Anyway, it's a bit anticlimactic, but everybody thought it was funny, including, I think, Brian. It just worries me a bit more as it makes me wonder what else goes over this guy's head. I hope his security duties aren't at a dangerous or important place. Yikes. And our second story. My brother and girlfriend take a mini vacation at our house. To give a little background, my wife and I just built a house from the foundation up. We moved in with our 2-year-old. When I was 16, my father offered to sell me the old family car at Kelly Blue Book value. I had to pay for the insurance and gas. When I turned 18, my father sat me down and stated he was going to start charging me rent. I moved out when I was 23. My little brother stayed home with my father until he was 25 and never paid a cent in rent. Also, my father gave him his first car free of charge, paid the insurance, and even paid him his gas. So when he was working, all his income was free play money. My father also pays for all meals and all food at the house. Now to the story. My brother, who never really contacts me without needing something, calls me up. He says that he wants to hang out with me and my family for a night. I was a bit shocked. We used to live 10 minutes away, in a dump of an apartment, and he never visited. As we had a large debt for the house and medical bills, we'd been eating the bare minimum to live. Our son, of course, got full meals as he's growing. We say yes, and he comes over with his girlfriend. They brought their computers and sleeping bags. He comes extremely late, but I'm just stoked to have my little brother over. We splurge on a big dinner for everyone, something we hadn't done in a year. We play LAN together. I noticed he ignored his nephew. I just chalked it up to him getting settled in for some fun. We play until 5 in the morning. Here's where things go downhill. He asked if before going to bed if we would order him some food. I offered to make him a breakfast with what we had in the house, which he gracefully declined. He then ordered up food he wanted and asked me to pay for it. I declined. My wife offered to go get some McDonald's, which he accepted. They then napped until 2 p.m. in our front room. We still had a child, and of course he couldn't be locked up in his room, which we offered them to sleep in, which they declined. So we would play in the front room while they slept as quietly as we could. Around 2 p.m., they wake up and ask what's for lunch. Again, we offer them what we have at the house, which they declined. They wanted pizza and ordered it up right away. When the pizza guy came, they asked us to pay. As you can see, this is how the flow goes. We end up paying, but tell him that we're low on cash and can't do this again. He says, of course. They go back to playing games loudly, and I join them at times. They get frustrated with my son, who's very interested in what everyone is doing. They constantly ask if he could be put elsewhere while they game. We gracefully decline. Dinner rolls around, and again, we're asked what's for dinner. We offer to make some food from home to their frustration. I ask when do they plan to head home. My brother states he'd like to stay for a day or more. I say that's okay, but we need to set limits. They of course agree, but have no plans to say when they'll head out. My wife and I start seeing the trend, and I start telling my wife we need to kick them out soon. My wife is mortified, and we fight over this quietly in our room. Now, this one-night stay, they end up crashing at our house for 4 days. Every day, they demand to order out every time. We decline, and they try to push it with ordering themselves and demanding we pay. At the 5-day mark, I've had enough and tell them it's time to pack it up. They would just sit in the front room and play on their computers every day and night without interacting with us more than letting us play with them. They had not offered or provided a single cent for any food they wanted or ate. We had put ourselves in the red heavily to feed them as well as try to make things peaceful. They also ordered movies, which was under our dime. We ended up having to restock the fridge many times and clean the front room many times. They would eat the food and just leave it where it was, be it plates or anything else. I ended up telling them they need to go now, and I told my dad to expect them back soon. They pretty much leave kicking and screaming. I called explaining what happened to my father. He just shrugs, but does tell me he'd told my brother he needed to start paying his share, and my brother felt he could get a 5-day vacation at my house with free food and board from us. The whole time they visited, they ignored my son and complained loudly that he was bothering them in his own home. Enough said. I've not allowed them to sleep over ever since. Update. A little more context. I'd not seen my brother more than a year, for no more than 2 hours at a time after I moved out. That was a 10-year time period. Since this visit, we've seen him just once a year still, only when getting together for our small family Christmas or Thanksgiving. I've not even gone to his apartment, not once. Since my son was born, he's not once tried to really interact with him, and with the second one, he was even less willing to even see the little one. My wife always asks why I don't want to keep in contact. I just remember this visit. This is a great example of how spoiling a child will only create a spoiled adult. And our last story. Say goodbye to yours and your friends' cars. This one took place around the 1960s and follows my late grandmother. For those wondering, my late grandmother is the same one who messed with her neighbor's sanity with that pink elephant and sunk the other neighbor's boat. This one was another story involving the drunk neighbor whose sanity my grandmother made question. Now, my dad was in his 20s when this started and began with one of my uncles. This uncle in particular is not my father's foster brother. My grandparents took him in when he was young and raised him as their own. They never argued with him if he wanted something or wanted to save up for something. So when my uncle was 17, he saved up for a car of his own. Now, the street my dad grew up on was pretty small, a dead-end street to be exact. He grew up in a fishing village in New York that was located on an inland peninsula. but also a yacht club was on that street, so parking on that street was a little tight, to be truthful. When my uncle got his car, he brought it out onto the street to repair it since the driveway was too small to work in. Unfortunately, it didn't have a license plate since you needed to be 18 at the time to get one, and my uncle was preparing it for when he turned 18. One day, the drunk neighbor invited a bunch of his friends over from the yacht club to go out on the water with him. When they arrived, they had little room to park their car, so the neighbor decided to do something pretty dumb. He had my uncle's car stickered and towed the same day, so his friends had room to park. My grandmother was pretty furious and decided to get her revenge right then and there. My grandmother was a bit of a pro when it came to revenge. Since she grew up with 6 sisters and 1 brother, you pick up on a lot of things. Now, while the neighbor and his buddies went out on their boats for the day, Grandma made the decision to head over to the Brooklyn Naval Yard. They had their own impound lot, so my grandmother spoke with them and had a bunch of tow trucks come to the street and one by one take the neighbor's car and all of his friends' cars with them. When they all came back, they were all in shock to find their cars gone. They managed to wake the neighbor up from his drunken stupor, who looked around to find my grandmother standing outside and looking around nonchalantly. He went right over to her and asked, "This is about the car, isn't it?" To which she innocently denied. After that, the neighbor and his buddies had to head to the other side of Brooklyn where the naval lot was, pay the tow trucks a lot of money, and pay the impound lot to not only get their cars back, but also head to the impound lot closer to where my dad grew up to get my uncle's car back. And one thing about impound lots, you're lucky to get your car back in one piece. After that, whenever the neighbor's friends came over, they parked in the neighboring street. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.